Hello and welcome, loyal subscribers, to another special video. This video is very special already. If you couldn't tell by the whole new outfit, yes, I'm in a different cosplay than usual. I am no longer Alice Angel, but this time I'm dressed as a bard because today we are bringing up a topic I've wanted to talk about a lot on this channel, Dungeons and Dragons, and I thought today was a very perfect video to actually start that off with. Because if you didn't already know, today is Dragon Week. And what is Dragon Week? So, Dragon Week, hold on. I have a script actually, I printed it out and everything. I'm so excited, guys. Monster Week is an annual community event created and organized by Ginny D and Pointy Hat, who are two of my favorite Dungeons and Dragons YouTubers, to bring together TTRPG creators on YouTube. This year's theme is dragons. So, basically what that means, for anyone who doesn't know what this is a ton of people are getting together to talk about dragons. And they're just going to do that for an entire week, and then they're going to be added up into a playlist. So then you'll have a whole bunch of YouTubers to watch, even if they're not really big YouTubers such as myself. This is super exciting. Last year, I believe it was Kraken Week, but I feel like Dragon Week this year is such a perfect opportunity since I myself don't really haven't talked about Dungeons and Dragons on this channel, which is really unfortunate since I really love the game. So, perfect opportunity. I'm going to be talking about dragons today. But what specifically about dragons? I'm so glad you asked, loyal subscribers. Jazz hands. I'm going to be talking about how to use dragons as not just, enemies, but also as characters in your campaigns. Because I see a lot of problems with dragons when I play as a player in Dungeons and Dragons. And I understand it's your campaign, you can play them however you want. But these are just some tips and tricks that I use to make them, I guess, more fun and to take advantage of the fact that they are dragons, So, first of all, dragons are kind of important. They've been in all sorts of fairy tales and storylines, as princess capturers, gold's hoarders, They often play as heroic allies or dangerous foes or a friend of a bard that is way too close. But nonetheless, a dragon should be important. Dragons aren't just some lower class nobodies. You can't play a dragon the same way you would play a goblin. Or, more importantly, a rule that I like to keep in mind when putting dragons into my campaigns is, could I replace them with a giant worm? I know that sounds very silly, but you gotta really think about it. A, do they speak at all? Or do they have a personality? B, do they just destroy stuff, or do they have an actual reason for destruction other than destroy, destroy, destroy? C, do they hoard or, any of that stuff? Do they have any specific enemies? Do they have minions? All that stuff. If your answers to all those questions is no, they just destroy because they want to destroy. No, they don't have a hoard because they don't need it. No, they don't talk because they just say rawr. That's kind of just not taking advantage of the potential of a dragon. In that case, just use another creature or kind of reconsider what you think a dragon should be in your campaign. Because dragons are very interesting creatures and you can use them for so many different things that, if you could just use a purple worm instead, just use a purple worm. Purple worms, by the way, for my non-B&D listeners, they are literally what they sound like. They're kind of just giant worms with teeth that eat things, and they're just really big and grotesque and stuff. What's my next bullet point? Reoccurrence. So I talked a lot about this in my Poppy Playtime video, and a ton of my other videos, I think, have touched upon this. But a big problem with me in D&D campaigns is when some foe is just introduced out of nowhere. I understand if they're a one quest enemy, like for example, if you're gonna have, I don't know, a quest where, your players have to steal a griffin egg. Okay, that makes reasonable sense if they're in a setting where they're like in an arena with different levels or whatever. But having just a dragon just to have a dragon and then just kind of putting them in randomly is so awkward because dragons have a big impact on storylines. A good example of this is Lord of the Rings. Everybody was very far away at the beginning and they traveled all the way to go see Smaug. Even though, Smaug was kind of just sleeping. It's because dragons have a huge impact on the world around them. And you don't necessarily have to have, the dragon come to your players every point or have the dragon mentioned in every sentence. But you have to leave traces of the dragon in the campaign so that they belong in the world that they live in. You could have them have an army of some sort or some sort of followers. You could have them have a place in some sort of mythology around the world. You could have burn marks in villages. For example, in one of my campaigns, I didn't even let my players know about a dragon. However, I had scorch marks of an entire village, and when they sourced they saw the source, they could tell that it was magical fire and not a natural hazard. So that's how they figured out that there was a dragon. And this happened reoccurringly so that people could figure out, hey, there might be a dragon here, and it kind of foreshadows, but also ties the dragon into the world that they live in. Maybe if your dragon steals sheep, have the dragon steal sheep so that the villagers tell the players that there are stolen sheep, Dragons need to eat. Dragons need a lot of things, and just kind of pretending that they're off to the sidelines is like guys, some dragons are 300 meters tall. They are a big impact on society. Okay, what else did I say? Also, they can have minions. For example, you can use kobolds, goblins. Heck, you could have a cult or whatever. I have an Aarakocra cult who likes dragons. I don't know why. They just do. You don't have to always make that much sense. It's Dungeons and Dragons. It's a game about elves. It doesn't have to be that serious, guys. Personality. It's okay if you're lacking one, but it's not okay if dragons lack one. I'm sorry, that was a cruel joke, but... I'm sorry, I'm using this ugly guy again. Why are your arms different? That's odd. Dragons should have personality. Whether it's destructor of villages, no heart and soul, or the kindly giant or whatever, or just, I follow rules. I don't follow rules. I have a soft spot. I don't really have a soft spot. Not really. Not even physically. I'm just iron scales all over, Dragons are different because they are more than animals. Again, with the purple worm rule, so sorry, my house blinds are going down right now. Again, with the purple worm rule, if your dragon doesn't have personality at all and you're just going to play them like any other animal in a campaign, don't use dragons. There's no point to be using dragons if you could just replace them with a purple worm. It's very simple. And you can give dragons different personalities. You can have a kind dragon be a danger. You can have a angry dragon, you can have a sad dragon, you can even have a romantic dragon. But I will warn you about the bards again, as I have an instrument, so therefore that means that I am a danger to dragons. Just kidding, please don't take that the wrong way. Anyways, I'm gonna put that down again. Let's look at what my stuff says now. Fights. Oh, so fighting is something that I struggle with personally as a DM, because the number part of Dungeons and Dragons is hard for me. I don't love doing math very much. However, there are certain moments where you can actually do a lot more fun math. And that is by taking advantage of the dragon itself. And not just the dragon, but also its surroundings. One of my favorite campaigns that I've ever played was actually where I was DM, because I'm the best. That is a joke also, by the way. I've played with some really wonderful DMs. You know who you are if you're watching this video. And one of my favorite campaigns was where there was a final boss who was a dragon, and she brought the entire town together to have her wedding with some other, some nobility of the area, right? So she was like a chromatic dragon, so she transformed and became a big dragon and whatever from her small human form. And this was a problem because in the giant chapel / palace area, her giant form actually made the building collapse. And instead of just having my players fight the dragon like I guess a more normal battle would be, where you just kind of take your swords, you take your spells, you chuck them at the dragon, they actually also had to worry about their surroundings and making sure that the civilians got to safety. And I honestly wasn't expecting to do this. This was a complete accident. I did want it to be chaotic, and I wanted my players to have to worry about falling rubble, but I wasn't expecting my players to actually prioritize the safety of the NPCs. And I honestly applauded them, first of all. I'm so sorry, my dog is barking. Stop it! Sorry. And it not only made for a really proud moment for me as a DM, because I no longer had murder hobos, but I also had a lot of pride in them for caring about the world of the campaign. And I felt like it was a very fun battle for them as well, because there was a lot more checks than just fighting checks. And I think you should be able to do that as a DM with dragons. Say, dragons can fly, have them have to climb up onto a high ledge to, like, you know, shoot the dragon or whatever, you know, have them have to play around with their surroundings. Have them do spells and stuff and take advantage of things. Hold on. Sorry for that pause. But basically, have your players do something with that dragon that isn't just plain normal fighting, because while some campaigns are very fun to just, you know, do fighting and such, I feel like players more so have fun when they have to experiment with the world around them and play around with their spells and play around with their ability checks and just have a ton of fun with that and take advantage of the skills that the dragon has. Take advantage of their size. Take advantage of their elements. Some dragons can swim. Some dragons can fly. Some dragons have layers. Some don't. You know, take advantage of what the dragon has in its skill set to make the battle more unique and more fun and more special. Okay. Okay. And the last one. Well, second to last one. Dragons should match the theme of the campaign. If you're going to do a campaign that is sci-fi, you're not just gonna want to throw in a red dragon. They shouldn't just have a dragon in the campaign to have a dragon, where something else would be more fitting. You know, despite it being Dungeons and Dragons, you don't want to just throw a dragon into the Feywild just to have a dragon. In that case, you can use something more fitting. Or, my next one is how to throw a dragon into a campaign about aliens. See what I mean? There is so much fun in the world of homebrew. In my opinion, homebrew is one of the funnest things about Dungeons and Dragons, and it's something I do very frequently. I love to homebrew things and make new creatures and such to play around with. I'm currently working on a sci-fi campaign which has a ton of nuclear energy and such, you know, that adds onto the setting. And how am I going to put a dragon in there? Well, first of all, I don't need to add a dragon in there. Second of all, I'm going to add one anyways because I want to. but also because it would match the main villain of the campaign. The main villain is a sentient creature that has a breath weapon and is also I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but he's going to be aquatic and possibly have the ability to fly, and he's definitely going to have the ability to cast spells and shapeshift and such, which are the abilities of a lot of dragons. You don't have to necessarily follow the rule books, because despite Dungeons and Dragons having rule books, one of the number one rules is to just change things if it would be funner without it. And I am realizing I'm using terrible grammar in this video. Please forgive me, my English teacher, if you see this. But you're supposed to have fun in Dungeons and Dragons, and you can swap up things. I'm not gonna just put up a straight dragon into the campaign, because a red dragon with chemical nuclear powers sounds kind of stupid. I'm gonna be honest, it sounds stupid. So instead, I'm going to reformat the dragon stats, give them different kinds of abilities, balance it out a little bit, and then call it a giant genetic experiment that has nuclear powers. Now this matches a ton better into the campaign setting, and I'm still going to use all the tips I used in this video to help mesh them in. You know, they're gonna have personality, they're gonna have spellcasting, they're gonna have fun battles and such, but also they're not gonna be just a straight normal dragon, because there's so many things you can do in the campaign settings and so many things you can do with such interesting monsters. And dragons, in my opinion, are probably the most interesting mythical creature, because there's so much you can do with them. And just remember always when you're doing them, dragons are a beautiful giant creature that needs to be respected in the settings of your campaign, because they're so cool. They're just so cool. And there's so much that you can do with the dragon that they shouldn't just be another one of your people, you know? They shouldn't just be another creature. They're special and they're beautiful and they're very different from purple worms. So take advantage of that. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out and enjoy your dragons.